Hi, everybody. This is Lee, and I haven't really commented too much on the DNC chair uh, election controversy results. And that's because I didn't really have a vested interest in who became the DNC chair. I had no intention of voting in the Democratic whatever coming up, that I would be voting independents and third party. And so, from an outside point of view, it turned out about like people expected. It turned out much like the Democratic National Convention, where we had several opportunities to turn the Democratic Party back to the left, and the Democratic Party elite decided that they preferred to go center right with Hillary Clinton, and then now with as the nominee of the Democratic Party, and that now with Tom Perez as the chair of the Democratic Party itself. And so then we had someone perceived as more progressive to the left, having been smeared and maybe baited and all sorts of things, driving down their vote totals. This being Keith Ellison, who was perceived as being more progressive, and then not surviving the attempts to smear him with bigotry, let's call it that. And then also class based fear mongering as well. And so Keith Ellison lost. There was also Sam Ronan, who was a distant third and was the true progressive, as many people said. And this race or results really is an indication of the direction of the party. And so people do have to decide, do they want to ride on that train, which is headed to the far right direction? And has been for many years now, that we have people trying to reform the party, much like Eugene McCarthy tried to reform the party back in the 70s. He was the anti-Vietnam War peace candidate. That's how far back the efforts to reform the Democratic Party stretch. And so typically that's where we see the neutralizing of progressive, and then someone coming into the race more to the far right and perhaps losing the nomination anyway. But, the purpose is not to allow the progressive to obtain high office. And so Eugene McCarthy was neutralized. His supporters were driven back into supporting the more warlike president. And then we see this happening again with Ted Kennedy, who was to the left of Jimmy Carter. And we see the rise of the superdelegates that helped to neutralize Ted Kennedy. And then we also have the same with Jesse Jackson, 1984, 1988. He was the progressive candidate. He was race baited. He was accused of being soft on crime. He was subjected to bigotry, being accused of being anti Semitic, many other things. And so he was neutralized as the progressive um, throughout the 80s. And while more centrist, moderate Democrats attempted to run for office against him and lost anyway, because again, if someone wants to vote for a Republican, they'll vote for a Republican, not necessarily someone masquerading as a Republican. Again, you had Jerry Brown, and then you had Bill Bradley up against uh, Al Gore. Al Gore and Joe Lieberman formed a very center right leaning Democratic ticket, which prompted the rise of Ralph Nader. But Bill Bradley was the left progressive, somewhat progressive in comparison to Al Gore. That Bill Bradley was for universal health care, many other things that progressives hold dear to their hearts, and Bill Bradley was neutralized. We saw the same with Howard Dean, who was also in favor of health care reform. being neutralized by John Kerry. And also, Howard Dean spoke out against the Iraq War, and people at that time in 2004 weren't ready to hear that message. And so he was baited as being crazy for being against the war, for being for universal health care and things like that. And so, you see like Rainbow Push Coalition, that was a progressive movement that Jesse Jackson promoted to, promote progressive ideals and to work and organize for that. But they were used to sheep herd more support, progressive support, into the Democratic Party, which was leaning centrist and right. Dean for America, or Democracy for America, another organization that sprang up, inspired by Howard Dean's brilliant use of the internet to fundraise from multiple donors, small donors. That was also used to sheep herd progressives, anti-war, peace progressives back into a war party that was also becoming increasingly disconnected from the plight of the poor and the working class. And so that was Howard Dean. And then we saw, after that, we saw, let's see, who came next? Oh, John Edward was not really considered a progressive, although he had, he was slightly to the left of both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Clinton was the far right, moderate Democratic candidate. She ran to the right of Barack Obama. Barack Obama was the centrist who masqueraded as a progressive. And then we had John Edwards, who spoke out on poverty issues early and often during the 2008 primary. And he was neutralized through allegations of his adulterous affair, and then later further neutralized when there were questions about his campaign finance, which were, charges were later dropped, but it definitely put the kibosh on his run for president. And then now, that brings us to present with Bernie Sanders having been a progressive, neutralized by the centrist right candidate, again, Hillary Clinton, because the Democratic Party elite chose her. And then another organization, Our Revolution, springing up to sheepdog and then drive and shepherd more progressives back into pro-war, pro-corporate finance, pro-Wall Street, pro-big business type of party. And so it's continuing on, that this effort is continuing, and the Democratic race for the Democratic chair shows us that it's actually never ending, and that people keep saying, well, if they keep doing this, and the answer is, well, they've been doing this for the last 40 to 50 years. And so what else do they have to show you? You've got a half a century of moves to the center and to the right, and a sort of turning away from progressive issues. What else do they have to show you? What else is it that you need to see in order to illustrate this for you, that the Democratic Party is not progressive, does not want to be progressive, and likely will never be progressive, and that it's going to the right, not to the left. Your efforts to reform. If you can think of something to do more than has been done, possibly, but everything that's being done today has been done, and the party continues to move to the far right. And so the question becomes, not what can you make someone else, what you can make someone else do, because truthfully, you have no control over anyone else's behavior but your own. You have no control of the Democratic Party, the Democratic establishment, the Democratic elite, the people who are running and making decisions for that party. You have no control over what they do. What you can control is what you do, and whether you continue to support someone who's oppressing you, Only you can make a choice to do that. But for those who want to do something different than has been done for the last 50 years, there are opportunities. I've spoken on them on this channel, but it's a decision that has to be made individually. But again, what's being done today, it is nothing new. It is not different. It has been done. It's been called by different names, but it has been done. The effort to reform the Democratic Party, 50 years worth of effort and time and energy and fundraising and money and heartbreak have come to this moment. So people have to decide for themselves if they want another 50 years worth of that, or they want to take an opportunity to do something different. And that's a choice that only they can make. No one can make it for them. But you are not captives and you're not victims, only if you choose to be. And only you can stop yourself from doing that. And I hope you do. Good luck.